In many settings, sexuality and sexual orientation is basically a non-topic, while religion, culture, material conditions and resulting power relations are completely different from the real world. Something which usually should have a great impact on people's sexual views. Our current understanding of sexuality, or the imagined pseudo-medieval viewpoint, might be the easiest to understand for many, but there's no reason to be boring when there are many possibilities to make things more interesting, especially if there are many cultures around the world where things are different, even today. Hello, I'm the Worldbuilding Sage, and in this video I'll show you how to create a setting with an interesting relationship to sexuality while still providing a sense of familiarity for the reader or player or whoever else might interact with your world. This is the first video of 3 in my Little Pride Month series, where I'll pull up my anthropology bachelor for a change. Anyways, sexuality is the way people experience and express themselves sexually. The understanding of sexuality differs from culture to culture and between the times, of course, which means it's hard to really define. But everyone has their own understanding of it, I think, so I don't need to explain a lot of it. Sexuality defines a huge part of human interaction and culture, from close relationships over eroticism, emotional bonding and care, spiritual feelings and behavior, and well, this thing you do when you want offspring. Even if you just want to do the thing without spawning new people into this world you have to later care for. In our Christian-influenced Western world, sexuality has for a long time been a taboo, and I'm not just talking about the fate of queer people. Just speaking about sexual relationship, the interaction between one person and another, being a bit more revealing in public compared to the strung-up past. This was all a taboo, and this all changed like 2 generations ago. While homosexuality, especially among men, has been a taboo for even longer, but the exact details are a bit more nuanced. And like always, upper society had it way easier. A lot of royalty and other nobles had their close same-sex protégés. Most famously Frederick the Great of Prussia, which to this day many historians continue to slander as being straight. Nobody who bans his wife from court to enjoy extended French company while being an excellent flute player can be straight. Even more so if your best friend, called Katte, has been executed by your father after you tried to escape to Great Britain together. Funnily enough, Frederick's brother Henry was openly gay, which was definitely possible at the time, just not for the king who had the duty to produce an heir. The general population had a harder time, however. After the fall of the Western Roman Empire and societal changes brought with it, the Catholic Church introduced many new canonizations, influenced by contemporary church writers. Before that, early Christian family, sexual and communal relationships are a whole other topic, and a can that will lead to too many arguments I'm not willing to take right now. With these new canonizations came the understanding that sex was only meant for procreation purposes, while other sexual activities became a sin. But even then, homosexuality was merely treated like any other sin, while passive males were treated the harshest. Only after the Christians began losing during the Crusades, they looked for scapegoats, one of which were homosexual relationships, which for both women and men were persecuted with harsh bodily penalties up to death. But in the years before Christianity took over the many pagan religions in Europe, sexuality was less of a spiritual and religious matter, but especially in Roman and Greek antiquity, it was closer related to duty and familial honor and being a good citizen to produce an heir. Your actual sexuality didn't matter. Well, you were laughed at if it's known that you're taking the passive role in a male homosexual relationship while being a high-standing citizen, but nobody really cared. Roman society was much more about dominance, submission and power relationships, and taking the passive role makes you, well, submissive. But like I said, overall you were expected to carry out your duty and marry, to father children and raising them, regardless of your orientation. But one of the most extreme examples of that were of course the muscle-clad warriors of Sparta. The Greek historian Xenophon has a detailed description about the common Spartan wedding night, where they kidnapped their wives out of their new in-laws' house, but they refused to have sex with their women if they don't wear men's clothing, if they don't cut their hair and shut up during sex while the lights are off, so they could pretend they are fucking a man. That's an extreme example, of course, but it shows how the relationship to sexuality changes between cultures and times. Ancient Greeks didn't really see between homo and hetero. These concepts didn't really exist. Only taking the passive role was seen as womanly, but who cares? Nobody has to know about it. In antiquity, sexuality was way more secularized compared to the spiritual understanding of the medieval age. And today we are returning to a more secular view of sexuality, which is fought against by people who blame all their issues on minorities. So what are we doing with this information? Sexuality and the relationship towards sexuality is an ever-changing topic in culture and society. Despite popular belief, it's a topic of power dynamics and societal hierarchy in all cultures, while in many cultures, including Christianity, an additional spiritual culture is added upon it to complicate things. So use this for your setting. Think about your culture's relation to sexuality as a whole and sexuality in private matters. Think about its relationship to societal norms and power dynamics. Think about how same-sex relationships are seen within your world and how it might affect straight relationships. Think how religion and spirituality might have a role to partake. It doesn't even have to be the Christian way, as there could be divinely mandated polyamorous relationships or whatever else. In the end, it depends on the culture you're trying to do. The latter is something for next week's video, however, so stay tuned for that by subscribing if you liked the video so far. At the very least, I'd appreciate a comment about sexuality and same-sex relationships in your world and how you would handle the topic. Now let's put this into world building practice. In my setting, I may have gone a bit overboard in it, considering I've thought about these topics way too hard for any of the cultures I've detailed by now. I'll keep the most detailed one for next week. So let's return to the United Kingdom of Norikmas-Losnik. The kingdom is ruled by the Silver Scale dynasty, who rules the kingdom for several centuries now, having spread their influence far and wide through marriage instead of the sword. Their rituals of courtly love are almost synonymous with them. Whenever a prince or princess of Norikma is within the right age, courtly correspondence is publicized, their love life made into a public matter of interest, while the public roots for one suitor or the other. This lack of intimacy and privacy, even more so than elsewhere on the continent for nobles, makes a large amount of these public relationships between the princes and nobles into a public matter only, while many seek their love and intimacy elsewhere, and some of these dabble in homosexual relationships too. While homosexuality isn't a taboo in Norikmas-Losnik, the issues arise when you are a prince or princess during the phase of courtly love, as they are handled like idols and pop stars to an immaculate level. These princes and princesses are being hyped up for their soon-to-be royal post, no matter if within the kingdom or outside of it. Any sign of weakness in that regard is handled as a taboo. Nobody is allowed to know about any other relationship, and it's made sure that it stays that way. But despite the fact that they are surrounded by vicious nobles who whisper every little secret they can get a hand on, the direct heirs have so far been spared of a scandal. Not because they were immaculate and paragons of virtue, but because they make extra sure to keep their other relationships a secret. Contracts with magical beings and powerful artifacts carrying illusions that might even hide your presence before a master spellcaster are only the beginning. Assassins and spies are hired to silence people who might have the slightest hint of an idea. And the personal guards, maids and butlers of the heirs are magically forced to keep silence. Overall, a lot of costly magic is used to keep the sexual antics of teenagers and young adults a secret. A high cost that pays out, as the dynasty's legitimacy relies a lot on their romanticized image. The common people have other issues in mind, however, and the ethnically diverse country of Norikma-Slosnik makes them have many different views on the same topic. One extreme example are the Sarlik people of the frontier in the far north of the kingdom. The people who live in Giants territory live in more communal relationships, a way to both honor the spirits and gods of fertility that bless their crops despite the cold, and a way to maximize fertility in other regards. I'm dipping into next week's topic a bit, but their society's gender aren't split between men and women, but between warriors, ritualists and homekeepers. Ritualists are in communion with the spirits and are exempt from sexual acts with worldly beings, while warriors and homekeepers have familial bonds with people they raise children with. But nobody is ever really sure who's the biological father of whom. It can be that two men or women in quotation marks live and raise children together, as much as in today's view a straight couple might live and raise children together. Well, so now that I've scared the fascists away, happy Pride Month! I hope you enjoyed my video. If so, leave a like and subscribe to stay tuned for more videos on this topic. See ya!